Hey besties, it's Cam from the internet, and if you're watching this on YouTube, I regret to inform you that there is no video of my face this week because I am traveling, and so we are making do with a setup including these lavalier mic things that I have for work and my phone. I'm I'm just happy to be here. But welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm sorry that I missed the last week or two. I don't actually even remember, but I had a reason, which I will now proceed to tell you because that's the topic of this podcast. Because pet ownership is a gas, as no one has said for many decades. Oh, so if you follow me on TikTok, you probably know that I adopted a cat about a year ago. Her name is Dulcie. She'll be 2 in June. And she is my tiny little child, and I love her very much. Of course, I love her brother, Warden. He is my tiny little teenager because he is about to turn 4 in August. Unlike Warden, Dulcie did not come from a good environment. Warden I've had since he was 4 months old. He is very well adjusted as a result. He's only really known one family. He's known a few homes because at first I lived alone, then I lived with my sister, then my parents had him while I moved out to California, and now he, lives with me in California. But for the most part, like, he's only known one family, he's only known one environment. Like, he's a very well-adjusted, curious, engaged cat as a result. I adopted Dulcie in June of 2024, and she came out of a foster situation with like 5 to 6 other cats. Out of all those cats, she was the youngest and the smallest, and so she wasn't getting the attention, care, enrichment, or food that she needed to be a happy, healthy, thriving, well-adjusted little girl. This was made incredibly evident to me the first time I ever met her because her coat was incredibly dull and coarse. Her body was very scrawny, and I was told that she had been eating food for a 12-week-old cat at over a year old, which was just horrifying to learn, and it didn't stop there. Dulcie was removed from the care of a previous owner because the vet's office that she was being seen by saw signs of abuse, and so she was taken out of there. However, despite that, no one except for me and my family realized that she had been walking around on a permanently dislocated knee. In December of 2024, she was in my parents' house visiting. We were in Virginia for the holidays, and my dad noticed she was walking funny. And we all thought maybe she pulled a muscle running up and down the stairs after her brother because she and Warden both love my parents' stairs. They just run up and down like little maniacs, honestly. And I watched her very carefully, and the limping stopped. And it wasn't even limping, it was so much of like she would step down and it looked like her hip was like buckling underneath her, kind of. And I was like, okay, this is concerning when it kept coming and going. So I took her to the vet, and the vet felt her leg and determined that her back knee had been dislocated. And based on the x-rays and the amount of cartilage degradation that had been going on there, she had been limping around, walking around, I guess, wasn't really limping, on that dislocated back knee for most of her life, and certainly for long enough where her body does not even register that that's painful anymore. Which, as someone who lives with chronic pain herself, that was a really, really shitty thing to learn about my cat. Like, no one wants to think about their creature suffering, but for me specifically, it was like, this is absolutely horrible that Dulcie has been walking around in so much pain from a dislocated joint that she doesn't even know that this isn't supposed to hurt her. So obviously my next question was, okay, what do we do about Dulcie? Because I will be damned if I let my creature walk around in pain. And the vet also said that it needed to be addressed sooner rather than later because A, she's young and so has the potential to heal well faster and more like holistically. But also because the longer she walks around with that dislocated knee, the more strain it puts on like her Achilles tendon, and the higher the risk is of her absolutely snapping said Achilles tendon. And with the way that this cat plays and has always played, like this cat, no indication prior to the weird hip buckling thing that was actually her leg, her knee failing to support her weight. So, it's me sitting in a vet clinic holding my wriggly daughter, which, like, if you've never seen Dulcie, like, there's pictures of her on my TikTok, but if you've never seen her, she's a Siamese cat who's about 9 pounds, and, like, she looks like she's made of Jello. Like, she's very squishy. She looks like a stuffed animal. Her brother looks like a stoat. If, like, I call him my worm with problems, a reference that you will also get if you've read The Locked Tomb. But Dulcie's just squishy. She's just, I call her my squishy little girl. And so I'm holding this squishy little wriggling gremlin, and the vet's like, yeah, she's gonna need knee surgery, and the recovery time is about 8 weeks, so you're gonna have to keep her in confinement for 8 weeks. And I'm holding this wriggling little gremlin kitten in my arms going, oh yeah, because that's gonna go well. Spoiler alert, gang. No. So I say, oh dear God, yes, please help me figure out how to schedule a surgery. The vet is like, yep, here's the cost estimate so that you can get an insurance pre-authorization. We're going to do all these things. It's going to be chill. It's going to be cool. It's going to be fine. I get the surgery scheduled, and Dulcie comes out of surgery very well. And then comes the hard part. I get her home and I get her in confinement, and she has to wear a cone. Y'all know the cone. They're called Elizabethan cones, but more colloquially, they're known as the cone of shame. Now, what I learned about cats during this process and during research, because I wanted to make it like as easy on her as possible to recover, is that you know how humans, we wear clothes and eventually, like, unless the clothes are super overstimulating and yucky feeling, we tend to forget that they're on our body, right? Like, to use an example, I forget that I have a bra on, until I adjust my bra and then I feel it because it's out of place, and that's annoying. But unless I do that, I'm not consciously aware that I have a bra on my body. Cats are not like that. Cats feel all the time, 24/7, if there's something on them. That's why everyone says to get cats used to their collars when they're very, very young. Because if you don't, when you try to put a collar on them, for the most part, when, they're 2, 3, 4, 5, or even older, they will flip their crap. I gotta stop swearing so I don't get kicked off of platforms on this podcast, but they will flip out because they are not used to this feeling of something on their body. That's why it's hard to harness train cats too. Dulcie, unfortunately, despite having been recorded as being very, very good with the cone when she was young and had gotten fixed, was not okay with the cone, to the point where she was thrashing around. This was while medicated on gabapentin, a sedative, mind you. She was thrashing around like a madwoman trying to get the cone off. And I was like, this cannot be good for your actual healing sutures. And what do you mean you have to wear this for 2 whole weeks? So I called the vet's office and I was like, hey, quick question. How do I stop this? And the vet goes, you cannot take the cone off because she will lick her stitches. She can't lick her stitches for 2 weeks. So either you're going to have to watch her 24/7 or she has to keep the cone on. And let me make this clear. I value my vet a lot. I appreciate her advice more than I can say. And I also know that she loves my cats and would do anything to help me help them. However, most vets, understandably because of their patient load, they can't know pets the way that their owners do. And I was looking at Dulcie thrashing around trying to get this cone off her head and then crying in pain because she would overstretch her leg or twinge her stitches. And I was like, okay, something needs to be done here. She needs to have time without the cone on, because the only way that she sleeps deep enough to heal is tucked under a blanket with her face covered by her tail. That's her comfort pose. And I don't believe that she was able to achieve that with the cone on. I watched her try, and she could kind of sort of do it, but the cone was in the way. And again, this is a cat that is really, really traumatized. She has been abused. And so there's only a very few things that make her feel safe. And I took her cone off at every opportunity if I could just sit there and watch her or work right next to her. But keep in mind, I'm trying to do all this while I am a chronically ill, chronically fatigued person myself, who is also at this point in time accidentally becoming extremely important at work, which is what the next episode is going to be about, is Cam becoming accidentally very important at work. And so all of that kind of coalesced, and I was just like, wow, this is not good. This cat is going to drive herself crazy or hurt herself. I am at my wit's end. And so I called an audible and did the thing that many people told me not to do, and yet I don't fully regret, which is I called my mother. Now, here's the thing you need to know about our relationship with my mother. We genuinely do have a good relationship. However, there are many, many things about the way that she raised me that weren't okay, in the sense that she was abusive, and there are many things that we will never see eye to eye on. She doesn't know that I'm queer and never will know, because despite the fact that we're both Christians, we hold very different understandings about God's level of coolness with the whole queer thing. It's not an argument I'm going to win. It's not a battle that I want to fight. And so I have just chosen not to. She had offered, when I told her that Dulcie was going to have to be in confinement for 8 weeks, to come out and help me. She reasoned, rightfully so, that Dulcie would need care, comfort, and enrichment. And if I wasn't able to provide those things due to the fact that I had to work, that she would be willing to come out if I paid for the flight. I had enough airline miles. I had been saving them to attend someone's wedding. I will have to figure out how to pay for that now, but I decided to spend those airline miles to get her to fly out because she does not work like a job of any kind. And so could reasonably accommodate my desire to have Dulcie be coneless and be watched. And my mother flew to California and stayed with me and watched the cats, and I watched Dulcie's quality of life improve immeasurably. She was still wearing the cone when we were asleep, and she did have to wear the cone for parts of the day if my mom and I wanted to leave to get food. My mom had to go to the bathroom, like whatever. We were very militant about making sure that if she wasn't being watched, she had the cone. So I don't want anyone coming into my comments and talking, about how I'm a terrible cat parent, because we did our diligence. But when my mom showed up and was able to watch Dulcie sleep and make sure that she didn't screw with her stitches but was sleeping, everything about her improved. She was eating again, she was drinking water again, she wasn't crying, she wasn't pacing, she wasn't squirming, and she didn't touch her cone, but at all. In a way that was very surprising to me personally, because Dulcie is a fusser. Like, if something bothers her, if someone touches her wrong, like, she fusses. And I understand, and I would never harsh her vibe for that. She's a very kind young lady who just wants everything to be just so. And I was very impressed by that, like, turnaround. And at the same time, it was a really, really, really long 2 weeks. Like, I'm sitting in this chair, like, slumped down kind of, because it was a lot. And that was extremely tiring. I wrote an edition of my newsletter that was like, does anyone else feel like work is fake or something like that? And like, listen, my job, a lot of it is fake. Like, there are things about my job, like I think there are about every job, that are just like, why is this real? How is this real? What is modern corporate America? However, my job is very important in the sense that, like, oh, that sounds so like conceited. My job is so important. Like, no. I work in marketing. Nothing is that deep, but I work for a healthcare startup that serves patients who receive Medicaid benefits. And so a lot of the work that I do is in its own way advocacy, especially in the face of all of the funding cuts that are being threatened. And so I had been really, really busy with work. I had to travel for part of the time my mom was in town. Like, I was actively like flying to and from a business trip, and was just like, oh, okay, I guess you're cat babysitting now. And like, the hard thing about working when you're a single person, like, I don't know, here's my thing. This podcast episode is all over the place. Just roll with the punches, gang. It'll be fine. The thing about being me, the thing about being single in the working world, is that, like, no one takes these sorts of things seriously unless it's a child, like a human child. Like, my cat had major orthopedic surgery, but I knew that there wouldn't be any sort of latitude for me to say, actually, I can't go to this 3-day offsite because I need to monitor my cat who just had surgery. And if it was, honestly, if it was a dog, probably I would have gotten that latitude. And if it was a human, certainly I would have gotten that latitude. And I understand why, and it is what it is, but it was a bit frustrating to feel like that inequity. It's the same sort of inequity I feel when, like, all of my colleagues have partners. I'm the only unpartnered one on my immediate team. And it's very weird to, like, hear people get all these concessions for, I'm doing this with my partner. Oh, that's so great. You're so responsible. And then it's like me, I'm just like here by myself. And that's why I do things like try to run a 5K and try to train for a marathon, is because I know from research that that's like this subconscious sociological signal to people that I'm like a diligent, hardworking hustler, and then I'll have career growth and people will perceive me better and blah, blah, blah. I can play the game, I know, but that's not what this episode is about. So I left Dulcie when my mom got there and came back and all this stuff. And so then I'm slowly becoming even more important at work and articulating all this to my mother. And then the shoe drops of, hey, Cam, we want you to go to Virginia for a couple weeks to do all of these marketing things. And I immediately go, okay, well, I can't leave my cat. Dulcie would have been coneless, cone-free, which is great, but she has to be in confinement because the other thing is she can't jump. It's like, you had knee surgery, baby girl, you can't jump. And again, you tried telling a not even 2-year-old kitten not to jump. She's gonna jump. It's inevitable, but she had to be penned up in some sort of cage or whatever you want to call it. I started calling it baby jail. She was locked up in baby jail with a ceiling so that she couldn't jump. And the thought of leaving her locked up in baby jail, except for the 2 times a day that my friend would come to feed her, was not sitting well with me at all. And I was telling my mom, like, I was ranting to her about how, like, I was really frustrated that, like I just told y'all, that I can't say, no, my cat had surgery, I can't come. Whereas if it was a baby or probably even a dog, it would have been accepted as like, oh yeah, of course, like that's fine. And my mom looks at me and goes, okay, well, do you want me to stay? And I'm like, 2 weeks here alone is a lot for you to be like, my mom is chronically ill. She has a very full life managing her chronic illness. And I didn't want to put her in a position of like needing to take on this additional load because that's not fair. So I was like, no, that doesn't feel right. Like, you need to be home. You have appointments, da 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 da. And then she goes, oh, okay, well, what if we just take the cats back to Virginia? You fly to Virginia with me. We'll each take a cat. And so I consulted with the vet and was like, is it safe for Dulcie to fly? She said, yes, as long as Dulcie's in a carrier alone. And so we flew to Virginia. And that's where I'm sitting right now. I'm sitting in my sister's apartment in Virginia. My parents have my cats. And we will see how things go. I think that I've lost about 10 years off my life in the course of this whole thing. And it's also really frustrating because I feel like every time I get like a shred of ground taken back, like in my life, something else happens. Like, I remember being at KatsuCon in February at National Harbor and just thinking to myself, like, this is probably the most normalcy I'm going to have until after Dulcie's surgery, because I did know that I needed to anticipate the surgery. But there's a big difference between what the vet like told me the recovery would be like and what it actually was like in practice. And I'm glad that I know this now, because God forbid this should ever happen to either one of my cats again. I now am prepared, like, emotionally and physically to weather the storm of orthopedic surgery recovery for cats. But also, I think that it taught me a lot about like how to retain my sanity, which is something that I historically struggle hardcore with. Like, I did not take a break or like time for fun or whatever the entire time my mom was in town. I tried to record podcast episodes for the next couple weeks before my mom showed up and ended up not being able to do that because I ran out of time and daylight. And other stuff in my life kept coming up that was like, oh, okay, like I guess when it rains it pours. And so I'm sitting in my sister's apartment with like time alone to myself for the first time in a really, really long time. And it's nice, but it's also like, oh, this is what it feels like to have like brain space to think. I don't know if it's like my trauma, my neurodivergency, my personality, all of the above. But for some reason, like when there's another person in my house, it does not matter who it is. It could be my mom, my sister, my close friends. It could be a maintenance guy. It could be the landlord. It could be anyone. If someone else is in my house, I like subconsciously like tense up. Like I can't like think, focus, process like a normal, relaxed person. I'm tense all of a sudden. And so I haven't been able to get any creative work done. I haven't been able to do anything except like struggle through my 9 to 5 and my like contract requirements, like for my freelancer side hustle thing, and then just like make dinner and go to bed, rinse and repeat, which again, not healthy for the long term. And even my therapist was like, yeah, what are you doing to take care of you? And I'm like, don't ask me that question because I don't have the energy to explain why the answer is nothing. But she did make the point that like you do have to take care of yourself because that's how your brain produces the good happy chemicals, which I know intellectually, but I don't know how to explain to her that like it's not going to produce the good happy chemicals because if I'm doing something that just sucks more energy, it's just going to make me angry. Because that's what happens when your therapist is not chronically ill, but she is queer and queer affirming. So you take what you can get. I have to like titrate my representation desires, I guess. I will also say like people on TikTok were curious about the financial piece of it. So I guess I'll close out the episode by talking about that and her prognosis. So the surgery on Dulcie's knee cost about $8,000. I had a sinking fund for pet care in my savings account that I pulled from to pay for it. I do have her on my pet insurance, which reimbursed me close to $6,000 of that, but still, like $2,000 is a lot to pay for up front. And I will be going out without health care until September because of that, because I cannot afford to do both. Additionally, there is some other rising costs in my world that are also prohibitive to that healthcare, but that's for next week's episode where I'm going to talk about work and life and perception and all that stuff. But yeah, Dulcie is okay. She's healing very well. The vet took a look at her and was surprised that she had been healing as well, given the amount of time that she'd been you know, post-surgery, and also given how miserable she was with the cone on. She's healing remarkably well. She is allowed out of baby jail for short walks as long as she's supervised. She and Warden are both leash and harness trained. They're very comfortable with the leash and harness. And so Dulcie is completely content to have the harness on and just shamble around my parents' house and sniff things and look at Warden and look outside. And she's doing remarkably well for a creature that is incredibly traumatized and incredibly anxious. And I'm very proud of her and her growth. Although, according to my mother, she yelled herself hoarse the first night she was in my mom's house because she was very annoyed that once again she was in baby jail. To which I say, I am so sorry, my beautiful daughter. However, you are going to have to suffer through that because it is for your safety. And I think that all in all, this has been a valuable experience in the sense that, like, you know, if surgery has to happen, I'd rather it happen sooner rather than later, because I did have to restrict how I was playing with her, because the vet was like, you need to, like, don't encourage her to jump, don't encourage rough play, she's gonna hurt herself. Like, it was basically, her body was a ticking time bomb in terms of, like, snapping her Achilles tendon until we could get the surgery done. And so I'm glad that we did it, and I wouldn't change it for the world. I just wish that asking my mom for help didn't come with such a cost, because there has been a cost. There has been a series of, like, family ruptures now that she's back home, and I don't really, like, it's a lot to unpack, and honestly, like, I've made a couple TikTok videos about it, just venting. There's another podcast episode that I recorded before I left town, and it does dig deepish into my family dynamics through the lens of what I learned by watching the Jody Hildebrandt and Ruby Franke documentary, so I'll save the bulk of that for that podcast episode release. But I'm pairing that release with another episode that's pretty lighthearted because, like, I know that that's, like, a tough topic, but I knew going into, like, asking my mom to come and help me with Dulcie that there would be a price to that. And I think that was the hardest thing that came out of this whole surgery experience, was just knowing that, like, that was going to happen, which sounds like a really weird, dramatic thing to say, but I think, like, I don't know, call me crazy, but I think that if you're a parent, I don't think that you should be okay with, like, your child dreading asking you for help. Or, like, asking you for help knowing that you're gonna, like, make them pay for it later. Like, to me, that is not okay, and as a parent, I would be, like, very disappointed in myself, or, like, just I'd feel bad knowing that, like, I effectively did that. You know what I'm saying? Usually when my mom started off all of, like, her abusive patterns and everything, like, it came out of nowhere. And this was me being like, I am knowingly bringing this on myself, which is not a good feeling, but it was necessary in the sense of, like, I want my cat to be okay. And the other thing is, like, when I don't remember what exactly was happening, but my mom, like, made this point to tell me that, you know, if I was going to have XYZ sort of attitude about my life, that she was going to call animal control on me and take the cat away because I was a bad cat parent. And, like, I can assure y'all, I have never once in my life been a bad cat parent. I would die for these animals. They, quite frankly, they live better and in more comfort and with better food and medication than I do. And I am completely okay with that. I love those creatures like I birthed them myself. And so now I hope my mom can see that I am not a bad cat parent, and I'm not anything except the best parent I can possibly be. And if she doesn't like that, she can bite me. But I really just, it's tiring. It's a lot to, like, have to know going in to an interaction that, like, I brought it on myself, basically. Like, I'm sitting in my own home going, I know this is going to happen to me. I know that I'm bringing on all this, like, abuse and blah, blah, blah on myself. And that just kind of sucks. So there's all of that. But the most important thing is that Dulcie is okay, and that her healthcare bill has been paid for by insurance and my savings, and all we need to do is focus on her recovery. And even though her mom, me, got accidentally very important at work, she's being treated well and cared for and loved, and that is genuinely all I could ever ask for my creature. So there's that. If you ever wondered what it's like in the aftermath of pet surgery, now you know. Thanks for listening to me blab. And if you want me to talk about more cat things, just tell me, because I will always talk about cat things. I just don't want to be boring. I have long since become resigned to the fact that I will be forevermore known as a crazy cat lady, and you know what? I am okay with that. So hopefully you enjoyed the voice note style podcast episode that this ended up being. And thank you for your patience with me. Thank you for your joyful support of the podcast. It's genuinely really cool that like people got so excited when it came back. You know, this is a silly little thing that I started doing for fun, and I'm deeply honored and delighted that people were having fun and enjoying it. And I hope that you continue to enjoy it. I am really stoked that like it was able to keep you company. Like people mentioned that like, oh yeah, I listen to the podcast while, you know, I'm like cleaning and stuff. And I don't know, that always makes me smile because like I like knowing that I can, you know, keep you company doing things that would otherwise like not be fun. And, you know, like life is short. We should try to enjoy things. And I'm honored that I get to be a part of what you do and how you enjoy things, how you enjoy life. Thank you for being part of this. Thank you for encouraging me and allowing me to be in your ears talking about things. And yeah, it's been a pleasure. I will talk to y'all next week. Until then, be kind to yourselves, be kind to others, make good choices or something. And I will talk to you soon. Love you. Bye.